Please, don't send me back." Rain turned the dirt road into rivers of mud. Nell Harper stumbled forward, her dress clinging to her skin like a second layer of cold. Every step felt heavier than the last. The small bundle pressed against her chest was all she owned in this world. Behind her, voices echoed through the storm. "Nell Harper, you come back here right now." She knew that voice. Mrs. Garrett, the woman who ran the orphanage with a ruler in one hand and a Bible in the other. The woman who said obedience was godliness. The woman who locked girls in the cellar when they asked questions. Nell ran faster. Lightning split the sky. For one bright moment she saw the empty plains stretching endlessly ahead. No trees, no shelter, just flat land and darkness. Then thunder rolled across the earth like cannon fire. Her knees buckled. She caught herself before falling. Mud splashed up her legs. The cold bit through her thin dress. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore. "Where can I go?" she whispered to the storm. The wind answered with a howl. Then she saw it. A light, small and distant. But there, a farmhouse maybe. Or a barn. She didn't care which. Anywhere was better than the orphanage. Anywhere was better than those dark rooms and cold beds. She pushed herself forward. Her lungs burned. Her legs shook, but the light grew closer. Behind her, the sound of horses rose above the rain. Lanterns swung through the darkness. They were coming for her. They always came. "God, please," she breathed. The farmhouse took shape through the rain. Wood planks, a stone chimney, smoke rising into the storm. Real, solid, safe. Nell stumbled onto the porch. Her hand reached for the door. She knocked once, twice, 3 times. Her knuckles were so cold they barely made a sound. Nothing. "Please," she whispered. "Please, someone." The door opened. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered. He held a rifle in one hand, a lantern in the other. His face was hard as stone, his eyes colder than the rain. "What do you want?" His voice was rough. Nell's throat tightened. She tried to speak but only managed to whisper, "Help." He looked past her into the darkness. His jaw worked. She could see the decision forming behind his eyes. Trust or caution, mercy or safety. "There's men after me," she said quickly. "If you turn me away, they'll take me back." "Back where?" "The orphanage." Something changed in his expression. Just for a moment, then it was gone. "I don't want trouble," he said. "I'm not trouble. I just need one night. Please. Just until morning." The sound of hoofbeats grew louder, closer. The man heard them too. His hand tightened on the rifle. "Get inside," he said. Nell didn't wait. She slipped through the door. He closed it behind her, locked it, set the lantern on the table. Then he walked to the window and pulled back the curtain just enough to see outside. The riders passed slowly. Their lanterns glowed like ghosts through the rain. Nell held her breath. The man stood perfectly still. For a long moment the only sound was the storm. Then the riders moved on. The man let the curtain fall. He turned to face her. "You hurt?" She shook her head. "Good." He walked past her to a chest in the corner, pulled out a rough wool blanket, tossed it to her. "You can stay till morning. After that you leave." Nell caught the blanket. Her fingers closed around the fabric. "Thank you." He didn't answer. Just picked up the rifle again and sat in the chair by the fire. He stared into the flames like she wasn't even there. The room was small but clean. A table, 2 chairs, a bed in the corner, shelves with tin plates and cups. Everything had its place. Nothing wasted. Nothing extra. Nell wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. She sat on the floor near the hearth, let the warmth soak into her bones. Her dress was still wet. Her hair dripped onto the floor. But for the first time in hours she wasn't running. She watched the man. He sat perfectly still, the rifle across his knees. His face showed nothing. No anger. No kindness. Just a hard, closed expression that said he'd seen too much to trust easily. "What's your name?" she asked softly. He didn't look at her. "Eli." "I'm Nell." He nodded once, said nothing more. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Rain hammered the roof, wind rattled the windows, but inside there was warmth. There was safety. Nell closed her eyes, let the fire warm her face, let the sound of the rain lull her into something close to peace. For the first time since she'd run, she allowed herself to believe she might survive the night. But what she didn't know was this: the storm outside would pass by morning. The storm between her and Eli Grant was only just beginning, and the choice she'd made tonight, knocking on a stranger's door in the darkness, would change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. The fire crackled. Eli stared into the flames, and Nell Harper, 19 years old and alone in the world, finally stopped running. Morning came slow and gray. Nell woke to the smell of coffee. Her body ached from sleeping on the hard floor. Her dress was still damp in places. She sat up carefully. The blanket fell from her shoulders. Eli stood by the stove, his back to her. He poured coffee into a tin cup. Didn't look her way. "There's bread on the table." She stood, her legs stiff, walked to the table, sat down. The bread was dry but warm. She ate in silence, each bite careful and small. Eli set the cup in front of her. "Drink." She wrapped her hands around it. The heat burned her palms. She didn't care. "Thank you." He nodded, turned away, pulled on his coat. "You should leave after you eat." Nell's chest tightened. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem. I have nowhere." He stopped, his hand on the door, his back to her. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched between them like a rope pulled tight. Then he spoke. Low. Firm. "I didn't ask for this." "I know." He opened the door. Cold air rushed in. He stepped outside. The door closed behind him. Nell sat alone. She looked around the small room. Everything was simple, clean, a place for everything, nothing extra, nothing wasted. This was a man who lived by routine, by order, and she disrupted that. She finished the bread, drank the coffee. Then she stood. She couldn't just leave. Not yet. She wouldn't beg. But she could work. She found a bucket by the door, walked outside. The rain had stopped. The sky was pale and colorless. The earth smelled of wet dirt and wood smoke. Eli was by the fence, repairing a broken post. He didn't look up when she approached. "I can help," she said. "I don't need help. I can milk a cow, mend a fence, chop wood." He drove the post into the ground. "Hard. You ever worked a farm before?" "No, but I can learn." He looked at her then, really looked. His eyes were the color of stone, gray and cold and unreadable. "Why?" "Because I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. You let me stay. You didn't turn me away. That's something." He studied her face. She held his gaze. Didn't look away, didn't flinch. Finally he nodded toward the barn. "Cow needs milking. Buckets inside." It wasn't permission. It wasn't kindness. But it was something. Nell walked to the barn. The cow was brown and patient. She'd never milked a cow before, but she'd watched the farmhands at the orphanage. She remembered the motion, the rhythm. It took her 3 tries to get it right. Her hands cramped. The cow shifted restlessly. But eventually milk began to flow into the bucket. When she came out, Eli was chopping wood. His axe rose and fell with steady precision. She set the bucket down, picked up the scattered pieces of wood, carried them to the pile by the house. He didn't thank her, didn't acknowledge her, just kept chopping. They worked in silence for an hour, maybe 2. Nell carried wood, Eli split logs. The sun climbed higher, though it never quite broke through the clouds. Finally Eli set down the axe. "You hungry?" She nodded. Inside he made cornbread and beans, simple food. He divided it onto 2 plates. They ate without speaking. But something had shifted. She could feel it. Not warmth exactly, but not hostility either. Just a careful, watchful neutrality. After the meal, Nell washed the dishes. Eli went back outside. She found him by the chicken coop, fixing a loose board. She picked up the hammer and nails, held them out to him without speaking. He took them. Their fingers didn't touch. The days began to form a pattern. Eli would wake first, make coffee. She would rise. They would eat. Then work. Always work. Mending fences, feeding animals, repairing the roof. They spoke only when necessary. "Hand me that rope. Water the horses. Corn needs picking." But in the silence, something was growing. A fragile understanding, a tentative trust. On the 3rd night, as they sat by the fire, Eli finally asked the question she'd been waiting for. "Why'd you run?" Nell stared into the flames. "Because staying meant dying," Maybe not my body, but everything else. They hurt you? Not the way you mean, but there are different kinds of hurt. He nodded slowly, like he understood, like maybe he carried his own kind of hurt. How long you been alone out here? She asked. 3 years. No family? Had a wife once. She died. Fever took her. I'm sorry. He shrugged. That's life out here. You lose things, you keep going. Nell looked at him across the firelight, saw the hard lines of his face, the walls he'd built around himself, the loneliness he wore like armor. You don't have to keep going alone, she said quietly. He met her eyes. For a moment something flickered there, something almost like hope, then it was gone. You're leaving tomorrow, he said. Am I? That was the deal. What if I don't want to leave? You can't stay here. Why not? Because, he stood abruptly. Because you're young, because you have your whole life ahead of you. Because I can't be responsible for another person. I'm not asking you to be responsible for me. I'm asking you to let me stay. Let me work. Let me earn my keep. And then what? You think this is a life? Alone on a farm miles from town, no friends, no future? It's better than the orphanage. That's not saying much. She stood too, faced him across the fire. Maybe not, but it's true. They stood there, the fire between them, the silence stretching. Finally Eli spoke. His voice was rough. 1 more week, that's all. Then you go to town, find proper work, a proper life. 1 week, she agreed. But they both knew it was a lie. 1 week wouldn't be enough, not for her to find a new life, and not for him to go back to being alone. Outside, the wind picked up. Clouds gathered on the horizon. Another storm was coming, but this time Nell wasn't running. This time she was exactly where she needed to be. Even if neither of them was ready to admit it yet, the week passed like water through fingers. Nell learned the rhythm of the farm. Wake before dawn, feed the chickens, milk the cow, mend what was broken, plant what needed planting. The work was hard, but it was honest, and for the first time in her life she felt useful. Eli watched her. Not obviously, but she caught him sometimes, his eyes following her as she carried water or swept the porch. He never said much, but he stopped telling her to leave. On the 8th day he rode into town for supplies. You need anything? He asked. Nell shook her head. I'm fine. I'll be back before dark. She watched him ride away, felt an unexpected twist in her chest. Fear maybe, or something else. Something she didn't have a name for yet. She spent the day working, weeding the garden, fixing a loose board on the henhouse, washing clothes in the creek. The sun was warm. The air smelled of grass and earth. She didn't hear the riders until they were almost at the house. 3 of them, 2 men and a woman. The woman wore black. Her face was sharp and pale. Mrs. Garrett. Nell's blood went cold. There you are. Mrs. Garrett dismounted. Her voice cut through the air like a knife. Did you really think you could hide forever? Nell backed toward the house. I'm not going back. You don't have a choice, girl. You belong to the state until you're 21. That's the law. I'm not a child. You're 19. Unmarried, with no means of support. That makes you a ward of the state. One of the men moved to Nell's left, the other to her right, cutting off escape. This is kidnapping, Nell said. Mrs. Garrett laughed, a cold, brittle sound. This is the law. Now come quietly, or we'll drag you back. Your choice. Nell looked at the house, at the farm, at everything she'd built in just 1 week. It wasn't much, but it was hers. No, she said. The men moved forward. Then a voice cut across the yard. That's far enough. Eli sat on his horse at the edge of the property. He must have seen them from the road. Come back. The rifle was across his saddle, not pointed at anyone, but ready. Mrs. Garrett turned. This doesn't concern you, Mr. Grant. You're on my land. That makes it my concern. This girl is a runaway. We're here to return her to the orphanage. She's not a girl, she's a woman, and she's working for me. Working? Mrs. Garrett's eyes narrowed. In what capacity? Farmhand, cook, whatever needs doing. And you're paying her? Room and board, same as any hand. Mrs. Garrett studied him, then looked at Nell, then back at Eli. I see. And does the town know about this arrangement? Don't much care what the town knows. You should care, Mr. Grant. A young woman, living alone with a man, unmarried. People talk. Let them talk. The law says she must return with us. The law says a lot of things. Eli's hand moved slightly toward the rifle, but out here the law's a long way away. The two men shifted nervously. They were deputies, maybe, or hired hands. Either way, they weren't gunfighters. Mrs. Garrett's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. We'll be back with the sheriff. You do that. Mrs. Garrett mounted her horse. The men followed. They rode away slowly, deliberately, like they were making a point. When they were gone, Eli dismounted. Walked to where Nell stood. She was shaking. You all right? He asked. She nodded. Couldn't speak. They'll come back. I know. With the sheriff. Maybe the marshal. I know. He looked at her. Really looked. Not just the surface, but deeper. Seeing something he hadn't let himself see before. Why'd you really run? Nell took a breath. Because Mrs. Garrett was arranging marriages. Selling girls to men who paid. Old men. Cruel men. She called it charity. Called it giving us a future. But it was slavery with a different name. Eli's expression darkened. She tried to sell you? To a man in his 50s. A widower. He wanted a young wife. Someone to cook and clean and bear children. Mrs. Garrett said I should be grateful. So you ran. So I ran. They stood in silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. I can't fight the law, Eli said finally. Can't fight the whole state. I know. But I can fight a few deputies. And one mean old woman. Nell looked up at him, saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not just kindness, something fiercer, something protective. Why would you do that? She asked. Because it's the right thing to do. That's all? He was quiet for a long moment. Maybe not. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning, with possibility. What happens now? Nell asked. Now we get ready. If they're coming back, we need to be prepared. How do we prepare for the law? We make sure the law sees what's really happening. We get witnesses. We get the town on our side. The town doesn't know me. Then we introduce you. Properly. That night they didn't sleep much. Eli sat by the window watching the road. Nell prepared food, cleaned the rifle, checked the supplies. They were getting ready for war. A small war maybe. But war nonetheless. As dawn broke, Eli finally spoke. There's a church service on Sunday. Whole town attends. You want me to go to church? I want them to see you. See that you're not some runaway child. You're a woman making her own choices. And if Mrs. Garrett's there, then we face her. Together. Together? The word echoed in Nell's mind. When had she stopped being alone? When had this become an us instead of a you and me? Eli, she said softly. Why are you doing this? He turned from the window, looked at her across the small room. Because for 3 years I've been alone. Told myself it was better that way. Safer. But then you knocked on my door in the middle of a storm, and something changed. What changed? I remembered what it feels like. To have someone to protect, someone to care about, someone worth fighting for. Nell's breath caught. Eli. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't say anything. Not yet. First we deal with Mrs. Garrett. Then we figure out what this is. But they both already knew what it was. It was the beginning of something neither had expected, something fragile and fierce and worth protecting. Outside, the first light of morning touched the horizon. Sunday was 2 days away. And when it came, Nell Harper would walk into that church with her head high, not as a runaway, not as a ward of the state, but as a woman who'd finally found a place to call home, even if she had to fight for it. Sunday morning came with clear skies. Nell wore the only dress she owned. It was old and patched, but clean. She'd washed it in the creek, dried it by the fire, done her best to look presentable. Eli wore his good shirt, the one he saved for town. He hitched the wagon, helped her up. Didn't say much. The ride to town took an hour. They passed other farms, other families heading to church. Some nodded, some stared. No one spoke. They already know, Nell said quietly. Of course they know. This is a small town. Everyone knows everything. They think I'm a scandal. Let them think what they want. But his jaw was tight. His hands gripped the reins harder than necessary. The church stood at the center of town. White paint, a tall steeple. People gathered on the steps, talking, laughing, living their ordinary Sunday lives. Until Eli's wagon pulled up. Then the talking stopped. Nell felt every eye on her, judging, measuring, finding her wanting. Eli climbed down, came around to her side, offered his hand. She took it, felt the strength in his grip, the steadiness. They walked toward the church together. The crowd parted. Whispers followed them like shadows. Then Mrs. Garrett stepped forward. "How dare you bring her here?" "This is a house of God," Eli said calmly. "Everyone's welcome. Not runaways. Not lawbreakers. She's broken no law. She's violated her contract with the state. She owes the orphanage 2 more years of service." Service. Nell's voice rang out clear and strong. "You mean slavery? You mean selling girls to the highest bidder?" The crowd murmured. Mrs. Garrett's face went white, then red. "How dare you slander me? I've devoted my life to caring for orphans. You've devoted your life to making money off them. That's a lie." "Is it?" Nell took a step forward. Her fear was gone, burned away by anger, by truth. "Then explain, Mr. Thornton. 53 years old, wanted a wife under 20, paid you $300 for me." More murmurs, louder now. Mrs. Garrett's eyes darted around. "That was a marriage arrangement, perfectly legal. I was 19. He was 53. I'd never met him, never agreed to anything, but you took his money and told me I had no choice." A woman in the crowd spoke up. "Is this true, Margaret?" Mrs. Garrett turned. "Of course not. The girl is lying. She's a troublemaker, always has been." "Then why did she run?" the woman asked. "Because she's ungrateful. Because she doesn't understand the opportunities I gave her." "Opportunities?" Nell's voice broke. "You locked us in the cellar when we questioned you, fed us scraps, worked us from dawn to dusk, and when we were old enough you sold us. Called it charity. Called it God's will." The crowd was silent now. Every ear listening, every eye watching. Then another voice spoke. A girl's voice, young and trembling. "She's telling the truth." Everyone turned. A girl stood at the edge of the crowd, 15, maybe 16, thin and pale. She wore the gray dress of the orphanage. "Lucy," Mrs. Garrett's voice was sharp. "What are you doing here?" "I followed you. I had to know. Had to see if Nell really got away." "Get back in the wagon now." "No." The girl's voice grew stronger. "I'm tired of being scared. Tired of lying. Everything Nell said is true. You sell us. You beat us. You tell us we're worthless. That we should be grateful for any man who'll take us." Another murmur. This one different. Angrier. Mrs. Garrett's face twisted. "You stupid girl. You've ruined everything." She lunged toward Lucy, but Ailey stepped between them. "That's enough. Move aside, Mr. Grant." "No. You have no authority here." "Maybe not, but I have eyes and ears, and I know wrong when I see it." The sheriff pushed through the crowd. Middle-aged, thick mustache. He looked tired. "What's going on here?" "This man is harboring a runaway," Mrs. Garrett said quickly. "I demand you arrest him." The sheriff looked at Eli. "At Nell. At Lucy. At the crowd. That true, Eli? She working for you?" "She is." "Paying her?" "Room and board. And the girl's there willingly." "Yes, sir." The sheriff turned to Nell. "That right, miss?" Nell met his eyes. "Yes, I work for Mr. Grant. I'm not a prisoner. I'm not a slave. I'm a free woman making my own choices." "She's 19, Mrs. Garrett hissed. "She's a ward of the state until 21. "Is there a law against a ward working for wages?" the sheriff asked. "She's unmarried, living alone with a man. It's improper." "Improper, maybe. But illegal?" He looked around. "Anyone here have proof of wrongdoing? Actual law breaking?" Silence. "Then there's nothing for me to arrest anyone for." "But, Margaret, I've known you 20 years, and I've heard rumors about that orphanage for just as long. Never had proof. Never had anyone willing to speak up. But now I do." He looked at Lucy. You willing to make a statement, girl? Lucy nodded. Her eyes were wide, frightened, but determined. Then we'll be having a talk. You, me, and the marshal. We're going to look into how that orphanage is run. Mrs. Garrett's face went pale. You can't do this. I can, and I will. She looked around at the crowd, saw no sympathy, no support, just cold, hard judgment. This isn't over, she said. Yeah, the sheriff said quietly. I think it is. Mrs. Garrett climbed into her wagon. The two deputies followed. They rode away in silence. No one watched them go. All eyes were on Nell. The woman who'd spoken earlier stepped forward. I'm Martha Klein. My husband and I run the general store. Ma'am, Nell said softly. You need anything, you come see us. Fabric for a dress, supplies, whatever you need. Thank you. Other women came forward, offering help, offering kindness. Not everyone, but enough. Eli stayed close to Nell's side, didn't touch her, but she could feel his presence. Solid, steady, safe. Finally, the preacher cleared his throat. Well, I think we've had enough excitement for one morning. Shall we go inside? Have our service? The crowd moved toward the church. Eli and Nell followed. They sat in the back pew. Lucy sat with them. The girl was crying quietly. Nell took her hand, squeezed it. You were so brave, Nell whispered. I was so scared. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. Lucy looked up at her. Where will I go now? Mrs. Garrett won't take me back. Eli leaned over. You can stay at the farm if you want. We've got room. Nell looked at him, saw something in his eyes, something warm and soft and unexpected. We? She asked quietly. Yeah, he said. We. And in that moment, in a church pew surrounded by strangers who were slowly becoming neighbors, Nell Harper felt something she'd never felt before. She felt like she belonged. The service began. The preacher talked about forgiveness, about new beginnings, about finding light in darkness. Nell barely heard the words. Her mind was spinning. Everything had changed. Mrs. Garrett was gone. Lucy was safe. The town knew the truth. But what shocked her most was Eli. The way he'd stood up for her, protected her, called them we. After the service, they rode back to the farm. Lucy sat between them, quiet, exhausted, but free. As the sun set, they sat on the porch, watching the sky turn gold and orange and purple. What happens now? Lucy asked. Eli looked at Nell. Nell looked at him. Now Nell said softly, we build something new, something better, something that's ours. And for the first time in 3 years, Eli Grant smiled. The days that followed were different. Lucy settled into the small room off the kitchen. She was quiet at first, jumpy. Every loud noise made her flinch. Every shadow made her turn. But slowly she began to relax, to smile, to believe she was safe. Nell taught her how to cook, how to sew, how to care for the animals. Lucy soaked it all up like dry earth soaks up rain. And Eli watched both of them. Not like he used to, not with suspicion or distance, but with something softer, something that looked almost like contentment. One morning, 3 weeks after the church incident, the sheriff rode up to the farm. Nell's stomach tightened. What now? But the sheriff was smiling. Relax, miss. I bring good news. Good news. The marshal shut down the orphanage. Mrs. Garrett's been arrested. Turns out she'd been taking state money for 20 girls but only had 12, pocketing the difference. What about the other girls? Lucy asked. Being placed with families. Real families. The kind that want children, not workers. Nell felt her knees go weak. Eli steadied her with a hand on her elbow. There's more, the sheriff said. The judge reviewed your case, Miss Harper, says you're old enough to make your own decisions. You're no longer a ward of the state. I'm free. You're free. Nell looked at Eli, saw her own relief reflected in his eyes. Thank you, Sheriff, Eli said. Thank you, Eli, for standing up when it mattered. Not many would have done that. After the sheriff left, the three of them stood in the yard. The sun was warm. The air smelled of hay and earth and possibility. I'm free, Nell whispered. Really free. You are, Eli said. I could go anywhere, do anything. You could. She looked at him. At the farm. At Lucy. at everything they'd built together in just a few short weeks. But I don't want to. No. No, I want to stay. If that's all right with you. Eli's expression softened. More than all right. Lucy clapped her hands. Does that mean we're a family now? Nell and Eli looked at each other. The question hung in the air between them. I suppose it does, Eli said slowly. If Nell wants it. What about what you want? Nell asked. He took a breath, stepped closer. I want what I've been too scared to want for 3 years. I want a home. A real one. With people in it. With life in it. With you in it. Nell's eyes stung. Eli, I know I'm not much. I'm too old, too set in my ways, too quiet, but I'm steady, and I'm here, and I'd be honored if you'd stay. Not as a worker, not as a guest, but as something more. What kind of more? The kind where I ask the preacher to come out here next Sunday. The kind where we do this properly. Nell's heart hammered. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking if you'd consider it. No pressure, no rush, but I figure if you're going to stay anyway, might as well make it official. Stop the town gossip for good. Lucy giggled. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. It's the only proposal you've ever heard, Eli said dryly. Still the worst. Nell laughed. Actually laughed. When had she last done that? He's right, you know. It was pretty terrible. I'm a farmer, not a poet. Lucky for you, I don't need poetry. She stepped closer, put her hand in his. I just need honesty. And you've given me that. You've given me safety. A home. A chance to choose my own life. That's more than poetry. That's everything. Eli's hand tightened around hers. Is that a yes? That's a yes. He smiled. Really smiled. The kind of smile that transformed his whole face, made him look younger, lighter, happy. Lucy threw her arms around both of them. We're really a family. We really are, Nell said softly. That night they sat on the porch. The sky was full of stars. Lucy had gone to bed. Nell and Eli sat in the old wooden chairs, the silence between them comfortable now. You ever think about that night? Nell asked. When I showed up in the storm? Every day. Do you regret opening the door? Not once. Even with all the trouble I brought? You didn't bring trouble. You brought life. He looked at her. This place was dead before you came. I was dead. Just going through motions, waiting for nothing. You changed that. You saved me first. Maybe we saved each other. She leaned her head on his shoulder, felt his arm come around her. Solid, steady, safe. What do you think happens now? She asked. Now we live. We work the farm, raise Lucy, build something good. Sounds simple. Simple's not a bad thing. No, she agreed. It's not. The next Sunday the preacher came to the farm. Martha Klein and her husband came too, and the sheriff, and a handful of others from town. They stood in the yard, under the open sky, with the land stretching endlessly around them. The preacher said the words. Eli and Nell said their vows. Simple words. True words. I take you as you are. I promise to stand beside you, in good times and hard times, for all the days I have left. I take you as you are. I promise to build a life with you, to choose you every day, for as long as I breathe. Lucy cried. Martha cried. Even the sheriff looked a little misty. When it was over, Eli kissed Nell, soft and brief and full of promise. Welcome home, Mrs. Grant, he whispered. I've been home for weeks, she whispered back. I just didn't know it yet. That evening, after everyone had gone, the three of them sat on the porch again, watching the sun set, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to deep purple. Tell me a story, Lucy said sleepily. What kind of story? Nell asked. A happy one. Nell thought for a moment. Once upon a time there was a girl who had nothing, no family, no home, no hope. She ran through a storm not knowing where she'd end up, but she found a door, and behind that door was a man who'd forgotten how to hope too, and together they learned something important. What did they learn? Lucy asked. That home isn't a place. It's the people who stand beside you when the storm comes. It's the hands that reach out in the darkness. It's the choice to stay when you could run. And it's the love that grows slowly, quietly in the spaces between words. Lucy smiled. That's a good story. It is, isn't it? Eli said nothing, just held Nell's hand, just breathed in the evening air, just existed in this moment of perfect simple peace. The farm wasn't much, the house was small, the work was hard, but it was theirs, built not on promises or expectations, but on something stronger, on trust, on respect, on the kind of love that doesn't shout or demand but simply endures. Nell Harper had run through a storm with nothing but a bundle and a prayer. She'd knocked on a stranger's door and found everything she'd been searching for. Not riches, not comfort, but something far more valuable. She'd found home, she'd found family, she'd found herself. And as the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky, Nell closed her eyes and whispered a word she'd never thought she'd say. Thank you. For the storm, for the door, for the man who'd opened it, for every hard moment and every small grace that had led her here. To this porch, this farm, this life, home, and the end. If this story of survival, courage, and unexpected love touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to Wild West Untold Love for more tales of redemption on the frontier. And if a moment or a feeling in this story stayed with you, we'd love to hear it in the comments below. Because sometimes the strongest souls are forged in the darkest places, and the greatest love stories begin with the simplest act of kindness.